In an industry stuffed with marketing bullshit, empty promises, and shiny suited liars, one woman's had enough. She knows what it's like to have the wrong clients, no money, and no time for fun. But she also knows how to fix it. And on the Business for Superheroes show, she promises to tell the down and dirty truth about business, sales, and running away with the circus. Here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Have you ever had to deal with difficult people, Joe?
What just happened? Hello and welcome to the Business for Superheroes podcast. I'm your host, Vicky Fraser, and this is my husband, Joe.
Hello. Hello.
I don't know what's going on.
Oh, I was trying something new.
You freaked me out.
I even told you beforehand that we were going to try something new.
Still freak me out.
Anyway, this is the Business for Superheroes show, and I'm drinking water because I'm going off to rehearsals shortly at the Pole Studio, and Joe is making faces.
I've rummaged in the cupboard of booze and found some apricot brandy, which I'm not sure is quite right.
Tastes all right to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm drinking water. Joe's drinking questionable apricot brandy. I am going to rehearsals shortly because I'm performing at Ludlow Gay Pride Festival at the weekend.
What are you performing at Ludlow Gay Pride Festival at the weekend?
Well said. I am in a couple of dance numbers, and I am also doing a Charlie Chaplin striptease burlesque routine in which I am going to have moustaches all over me.
Strategic moustaches.
And a non-strategic moustaches also. And I'm also doing a pole performance. So if anyone is in Ludlow on Saturday afternoon and evening, come along to our performance. It's going to be loads of people doing really cool stuff. It's not just me. There's loads of really talented people, and it's just going to be great fun. For example, one of the ladies in our group, Janet, is going to be doing a performance as a spoken word performance as the Queen, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Because all queens are welcome at Gay Pride.
Excellent.
Anyway, so this week we're talking about how to deal with difficult people, and we're going to share our some strategies for how to deal with difficult people.
Our top number of strategies.
Yes. I'm going to count them up a little bit later so that you'll probably know how many strategies there are because it will be in the title of this podcast. I need to count them.
All right.
So yeah, we all have to deal with people, even if we work alone. Even I have to deal with people sometimes. Some people are difficult, and difficult people cause stress. And so I thought this week it might be useful to talk about how to deal with these difficult people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that we deal with difficult people productively because there's been some research from Friedrich Schiller University in Germany which found exposure to stimuli that cause strong negative emotions, which is the same kind of thing you get when you deal with difficult people, causes test subjects' brains to have like a massive stress response. So it's really important to avoid people at all costs, really.
Hang on a minute. Is that really the summary of their findings? Exposure to strong negative emotions causes stress.
Yeah, I think it goes into a bit more detail.
I would hope it goes into a bit more detail than that because that sounds pretty kind of.
But it's not obvious to everybody though, because not everybody realizes that negative emotions cause stress, because people think of stress as being, if you're really super busy or you're overworked or there's something very stressful going on in your life, and they don't necessarily tie it into a negative emotion. But if you're dealing with people who upset you, for example, like upset you quite badly, then that actually releases stress hormones in your brain and all of the kind of stress responses that go with it. And that's fine if you're stressed for like a short period of time. It's actually quite a good thing, because if you're working on like a big project or you've got a performance coming up, then it's like a finite thing.
Yeah, I mean, stress is like an evolutionary thing, isn't it? It's designed to get your heart rate going, get your adrenaline up, prepare you for some physical stuff you need to do, which is beat it over the head or run away. Exactly.
But what we're talking about here is kind of chronic long-term stress, and that's really damaging, as in it will kill you. It kills people. And we live our modern lives, I think, in a chronic state of stress. And one of the things that you can do about that is watch how you're interacting with difficult people and the effect that they have on you, because one of the biggest problems with stress is not like the stress that you can see coming, like big projects and that kind of thing. It's the stress that you don't see coming, and that's where the difficult people thing comes in.
Okay.
So so what are difficult people? I thought we'd give a few examples, and I'm not talking here about people who have genuine mental illnesses or conditions that might affect their behaviour, because I think that's a different topic, even though you still need to learn to deal with people like that, because for both, for everybody's peace of mind, I guess. But I'm talking more about just kind of normal people, and there are many, many types. So can you think of any types of difficult people, Joe?
Super picky people or super negative people.
Oh yeah, Donald Downers. People with a problems for every solution.
Yes. People who, are sort of feeling railroaded into the things that they're doing.
Yeah, people who are just flat out mean and cruel.
Do you think there's many of those? I don't see many of those. I
don't think there's many of those, but I think, I'm not labeling all of these people as this is the type of person, because I think everybody is sometimes a bit of a difficult person.
Yeah, you certainly are.
Thanks. But I'm talking about the people who have characteristics that you kind of, that they're going to be, you get a sinking feeling when you're going to go to the pub and that person who's a better than, I call them better thans, the person who's always done what you've done or is about to do, but they've done it bigger and better.
Two sheds.
Two sheds. So is that what you call it?
Well, there's... Yeah, it depends who you're talking to, but they're either two sheds or two shits.
Okay.
Yes, because if you've just bought a shed, then they've just bought two.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's exactly the type of person that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And that is a characteristic that people tend to have. A few other examples. People who have chronic victim mentality. Everything is somebody else's fault and there's nothing they can do about it.
We've discussed this.
Drives me up the wall. Bullies.
Yeah.
Chronic attention seekers. Dirty laundry areas in public.
What's bullies? I find interesting. What is going on with bullies? What's going on in their heads?
I do not know, and I think that's probably outside the scope of this particular episode.
Okay, so we're just all right.
You're common or garden crazy. Chronic liars.
Okay.
And fantasists. The type who was it Walter Mitty? Is that the name that I'm looking for? Doormats and passive weaklings who just let people walk all over them. They're very difficult to deal with. Two-faced people who are saying something completely different behind your back to what they're saying to your face.
Sure.
That can be very difficult. Passive-aggressive people.
And you see, in my world, we would be talking more about people who professionally scope creep.
That's a very good one.
They're a massive pain in my arse.
Yeah.
They start at the project, they've got 6 things they want to achieve, and by the end of the project, they've got 60 things they want to achieve, and every interaction with them is them trying to sneak something else into the project. And
that is entirely applicable to any kind of a creative freelancer type as well, because the number of times that you put a quote or a proposition out there for somebody for a writing project, and it's like, oh, can we just do these pages as well and this page and that, and it's like, well, yes, but it's going to cost you this much more. It's like, oh, no, it's just a tiny thing. Yeah. At which point your head explodes. So how do you deal with chronic scope creep?
I strangle anybody who doesn't have a documented agreement really
just
early
for
on.
Any law enforcement or legal people listening, you don't actually strangle people, do you?
No strangling. I make sure people have written things down via the medium of violence. No.
Write things down via violence.
No, I ensure they have written things down via the medium of violence.
Okay, that's not true. He does not do that.
I don't do that either. No, I make sure that we've got an agreement. When a customer says, here's all the things I want you to do, I write down, here's all the things I think you want me to do. And then I make sure they read it and agree with me. Cool. And make, add any further detail or clarity that they can. And then that's called user requirement spec.
Cool, okay. And so what if that person then starts to creep the scope and it's like, oh, can we just add this on and can we just add that on? How do you set expectations early on so that they know they're going to be paying extra for any of this creepy stuff?
Okay, well, what you do is absolutely, you do not nod. You don't say yes. You don't say, we'll think about it. What you do is you say immediately, as soon as they propose it, you say, oh, okay, that goes into the request for engineering amendment form. And you have a process, and you drop them straight into the process. And that gives a really strong message that you're not fucking around, to be perfectly honest. It makes them kind of think, oh, okay, I've just verbalised some bright idea I had when I was walking towards this guy, and now it's going to cost me.
That's a really good tip for anybody who is listening and who is especially copywriters, designers, that kind of business owner, because it's actually very difficult to deal with people who scope creep, because they will, a lot of them, and often they don't do it on purpose, sometimes they do it on purpose, will make you feel guilty about it.
There's a very common type of person who will come up with a whole bunch of things that they need from the project, whether it be words or pages or engineering or whatever, and every interaction since then they will just, and it's just daft little things that pop into their heads usually. It's not even like a particularly considered thought. And that's why it's important that you jump on them the first time that they, a little bit of bright idea pops out of their head. Yeah. And you've got to get it. You've got to say, right, okay, fine, no problem. Let me just document this so that we're both clear what you're talking about. And they go, oh shit, he's taking me seriously. And instead of it being some little bright idea that in 6 weeks' time he can remember mentioning and how come it's not been done. Yeah. It's actually part of the process. It's documented and they know it's going to cost them.
That's a really good tip. Thanks, Joe. And related to that, we can... Oh, it's gone out of my head now. I'm quite upset.
Oh.
I know. Oh, yeah, related to that. Write down on a piece of paper in big red letters, poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. That's also related to that, because we've all had clients or people, family members often, who are having, in the midst of a crisis, and expect you to drop everything to fix it for them. That is 9 times out of 10 totally unreasonable of them. And, obviously you're not going to leave somebody that you love in the shit if something that has happened to them. But if, your poor planning does not constitute an emergency on my part.
No.
And, I will help you when I can and when I am available to do so. But I think often as well, helping people out, kind of picking up their messes like that, doesn't do them any favours, because it teaches them to rely on you.
And people relying on you is one thing, but you want people to rely on you in a professional and organised manner. You don't want to just be the professional crap catcher.
Yeah, you really don't.
That's just a bad place to be, unless you're going to charge.
You don't want to be the personal crap catcher either.
No, absolutely. Unless you're going to charge an absolute boatload of money.
Yes.
Absolutely shocking amounts of cash.
By all means, put what I always used to call a pain in the arse clause, a pain in the arse fee added on it. If somebody wants something super fast in an emergency that is not of your making, I mean, if you've made the emergency, then pull out all the stops to fix it. But if it's an emergency not of your making, you are quite within your rights and perfectly reasonable to say it's going to cost you 3 times as much.
Yeah. We quite frequently at work get calls where someone will say, we've got this problem and we need somebody in tomorrow. And you're like, well, that's going to be expensive, because we'll have to reschedule some things. We might have to disappoint some people. And even if you've got 3 engineers twiddling their thumbs, playing poker, you absolutely, No,
you do know, because if you drop everything and fix it, and don't charge them for it, you are training them to do that to you on a regular basis. And it's not good for anybody. And this is the thing, this is not about price gouging people at all, even though I have no problem with making a lot of money off of other people's poor planning. This is actually about training them to run their business better, or to run their life better, because constantly fighting fires like that and training people to do that is not helping them. It's a very stressful way to live.
Yeah.
And so if you make it really deeply unpleasant for them to get your help in such a situation, they're going to think twice before they do it again, and they're going to hopefully think about, how can I plan my world better so that this doesn't happen in future.
These guys are really good and they're really expensive and they really can fix the problem.
Yeah.
But it's going to cost an awful lot if I do have to call them in for tomorrow.
And as part of that massive fee that you charge them, build in a plan of action to help them not do it again, because that's a really, really cool value add that you can give. And if you charge a shocking amount of money, then you will have the space and time to work with them to build a plan to say, how do we make sure that this never happens again?
Yeah.
Because you don't want it to happen again, because whilst it might bring you in an enormous chunk of cash, in my experience, the stress it causes to me is not worth it. I'd rather be unstressed and have extra time than have a big pile of cash in my bank account. I can always make more money.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's not really a tangent. That was a really good little aside, and we dealt with a few different types of difficult people there. But I just wanted to run through a few little strategies, for dealing with perhaps less specific difficult people problems. Because I think everyone finds it very difficult, especially if it's friends or family or people that you care about, to deal with that kind of thing. So first of all, don't try and change people ever. It's futile. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Heretics with Bookaholics Group, and it's really interesting. It's all about how beliefs work and how sense of identity works, and how if you try and point out to people how they're wrong, they will just get more and more entrenched in their view. And that goes for, personality faults as well. If people are going to dig that, nobody wants to believe bad things about themselves. So if you point out that somebody is being a dick or is a dick, then they're not going to take it well, and they're just probably going to dig their heels in. If this is people that you care about or that you want to work with, then I'm going to go back to the whole empathy thing again. Try and understand where they're coming from. Because if somebody's being really difficult, then there's probably a reason for it.
Yes, and quite often it's offloading their own. They've caused a problem, and they desperately want it to be somebody else's fault.
Yes, and they probably feel bad about the problem they've caused as well.
Yeah.
Unless they're a sociopath. And some people are legitimate sociopaths, and there is nothing you can do with those people. And I would say just cut your losses, burn your bridges, and never talk to them again. And that includes, by the way, if they're family members, because there is the number of people who stay in toxic relationships baffles me. And I'm certainly not victim blaming here, but the only person who has the power to walk away from stuff like that is you. And even if it's family, doesn't mean that you have to spend your life letting them make you miserable. You don't. There's this whole thing, blood is thicker than water. Well, yeah, if your family is wonderful and you get on really well with them, if there's somebody in your family who is a sociopath and is making your life a misery, why would you go out of your way to spend time with them? Yeah. Do you think that's unreasonable?
I don't think it's unreasonable, no. I don't think it's unreasonable to drop anybody, frankly. Your prime responsibility is to yourself and your life and your future and your health.
And the people who you care about.
Your secondary responsibility is to the people that you care about.
Yeah, because you can't look after other people if you're not looking after yourself.
No. So if somebody's doing you damage or your family damage, I would just say, move on.
I mean, you can. I would say, if they've been in your life for a long time and you care about them, then spend a bit of energy trying to figure out what's going on and how to get to the bottom of it.
Yes, it's not like the first time somebody phones you at 2 a.m. and asks for help that you just go, no, I'm never speaking to you again. That's not the way to go. Yeah, and it's not like if you have one row or somebody upsets you once, then it's time to cut them out of your life. I think that's actually a really sad way to live your life, and you can, good friendships can die that way. Yeah, which is a real shame. But if somebody has consistently demonstrated that they are not going to help themselves, they're not going to change their behaviour, and they're doing you harm.
Yeah,
and they've done that several times, and they've
then walk away. It's not your problem. I remember seeing something that says you are not the jackass whisperer. It is true. if you're a professional counsellor, then that's different. But there's no reason for you to ruin your own life to accommodate somebody else's bullshit at all. So what? Oh yeah, limits. Setting limits. We're kind of going. This is. I guess it's all coming out of what we've just said, really. But it's really important to set limits. So, for example, dealing with people who are chronically negative. They love wallowing in their misery. I think they enjoy it, and they're really not interested in fixing their problems. And they will suck you in. They just want people to join their pity party so that they feel better about themselves. And, you can do that, but you'll get sucked into their nonsense. And it can be really difficult because you don't want to feel like you're being mean or rude. None of us like to feel like that, especially if it's somebody who is or was a friend. But you can be sympathetic without getting sucked into this bullshit. And so I sometimes think that I'm not a very good listener. But actually, I will only listen to people's problems for a certain amount of time before I say, okay, so how are we going to fix this?
You see, that's something I try not to do, because it's met with resistance quite often. Quite often somebody just wants to offload. They don't really want advice. And
that's fine. And I do understand that, but there is only so much offloading I think that someone should be willing to deal with before it's like, okay, so that's, you've wallowed and it's
but moving forward,
how are we going to fix this? Because and I'm talking really about people who are chronically negative, not somebody who's just had a bad day. I'm talking about the person who every time you see them is just a puddle of woe, and it is, people who you just dread seeing because you just know that it's going to be, that it's going to be problem after problem after problem.
Yeah.
And so my advice there, and this is advice I've also had from counsellors and people like that as well, is, set the limits, ask them how they're going to fix the problem. And that has two benefits. First of all, it tends to get them to stop complaining. And second of all, it gets them to focus on the positive, on what they can do. And that's good for them and you. And there are certain people in the village who could benefit very much from that advice. Also, kill your negative self-talk. So if somebody's being awful to you, it's really easy to get sucked into that and start thinking, oh, maybe I am.
Start believing them.
Yeah, start believing them. And, it's don't internalize it. You can let it upset you for half an hour, and then you need to get people around you who are like, no, that's nonsense. You're a decent person. We're kind of going back to last week's takeaway advice about your Post-it notes. Your Post-it notes of the names of people who are important, genuinely important to you. If the person who's upset you isn't on that Post-it note, then stuff them.
Yeah.
That's I found that to be a really cool thing to do. Okay, so boundaries, and this established boundaries. I reckon this is a good one for people who work from home, because I know of a few people who work from home and their partners also work from home, or their partners might be in and out or whatever. And they find it very, very difficult to set boundaries, and it might be that they're in the middle of something and their partner will kind of just toddle in and start talking. And that is actually really difficult, because I find myself
I'm sorry.
No, because you're out most of the day, but if I'm working and you'll come in and say something to me and I'll be like, because I'm literally in the middle of something, and it's really difficult to keep your flow and not get jolted out of it, and then you're screwed for 5 minutes. And so if you're a person who's listening and you have a partner who works from home and they look like they're typing or reading or writing intensely, please leave them alone until they look like they're finished, because it's really difficult to get back into it. But I know that a few of my clients have spoken to me about this kind of thing before, and they said, how do I deal with this? I don't want to row, and it's their house as well. It's like, yes, it is their house as well, but this is a business that you're running.
You're at work,
and it's helping to presumably pay the bills of the house that you're both living in. And so it's okay to set rules and boundaries, and you need to sit down and talk to them, but sort of say, between the hours of 10 and 12, if my door's closed, it needs to stay closed because I'm concentrating. If my door's open, by all means pop in. If I'm on the phone, stay away. If I'm running some kind of a video call or, whatever. But it's just a case of setting those boundaries, and it's the same with kids as well. You say, if my door's closed, you don't come in. And it might take a while to train people, but it's not unreasonable for you to do that. I think the main problem with that is getting over, and I'm not saying people's partners are difficult, I'm just saying that is a difficulty sometimes of people. And it's the same in offices as well. I've had this conversation with you many times where you're like, oh, I'm just getting interrupted all the time. It's like, close your door, put a sign on your desk that says, do not disturb.
I just booked a conference room and moved into it today.
Did you?
Yeah.
And how did that go?
It's fine.
Did you lock the door?
I shut the door.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's I remember you get so frustrated sometimes, and my answer is, then you need to set your rules and stick to them. And not allow people to, bring you their little problems, because I bet 9 times out of 10 they solve them anyway if you don't help them. And let's say it's good for them. So stay calm. Rise above it, keep your hair on, don't meet angry emotion with angry emotion, because that never goes well. And even if it's sometimes really difficult, it's like that count to 10 thing. And pick your battles. You don't have to dive into every battle. If it's something really stupid that's not life and death, then let it go. Like, water off a duck's back, and pick the wait for the next time. In the meantime, come up with a strategy for dealing with that kind of crap. But yeah, rise above it. You don't you don't have to respond to emotional stuff. I remember one of my clients being really upset because one of her clients had been properly yelling at her on the phone, and I thought, hey, that's awful. You don't yell at people on the phone.
That's super unprofessional.
Super unprofessional. And and B, you don't have to listen to that. And just because they're a client, especially if they're a client almost, but
yeah.
You don't have to. And I think the best way to deal with it is to very calmly say, I'm going to have to go now. I will call you back in half an hour. and then put the phone down. You don't hang up on them abruptly. You don't need to, don't necessarily need to just be like, fuck you, and hang up. But that, I'm going to have to go now. I'll call you back in half an hour.
We had an incident where one of our junior engineers, who is a lovely guy, is very softly spoken, and he's a very good guy. He's a very good engineer. He was working on a customer site, and it's a company that everybody who's listening to this podcast would know. And I had, I think, 4 guys on that site, and one of the customer's engineers yelled at my guy.
Oh, no.
Properly got up in his face and yelled at him. Nice. And he had a word with the senior engineer on site, and the senior engineer on site phoned me, and I pulled all 4 of them off site halfway through the job. Just told them to pick up their tools and come back. And they all came back to the office looking a little bit like, ooh, this is going to kick off. And I had a phone call not very long later, half an hour, 40 minutes later, from somebody senior on the site saying, where have all your engineers gone? And I said, well, one of them got yelled at by this guy, and he was sworn at, and we pulled him off site. And he said, oh, I'll call you back. And he put the phone down. And that person got a really serious bollocking, and it reset the whole relationship between us and them. They got much more civilized about how they treated us.
But that is, again, that's probably, I would like that to be the takeaway for this week, actually, that people will treat you how you allow them to treat you, by and large. And that's a really good example. If you had, if that guy had not said anything, if your engineer had not said anything, or if you hadn't done anything and just been like, oh, I'll suck it up, buttercup, I would imagine that relationship would have just got worse and worse. And they would have carried on stamping all over you. And by you simply saying, no, that is, that's unacceptable behaviour. We're going to stop working until it's sorted out.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the boundaries. That's the rules of engagement.
Yeah.
And you can do that. It's not always going to be that kind of, I don't know, dramatic, I guess.
It did feel quite dramatic at the day. It was
for somebody kind of swearing in your face and stuff, that is thankfully quite rare. But yeah, even if you want to be empathetic, and I would say, when it's calmed down, go back to them and say, are you okay? Because that is not normal behaviour.
Oh yeah, I mean, we all made up afterwards.
Yeah, but you do need to set the rule. This is not okay. This behaviour is not okay. We'll talk about, maybe what's wrong at some point, but right now we're going to calm down in different areas, and that's not going to happen again because it's not reasonable. So yeah, I think that's probably a really good note to end on.
Cool.
Yeah, that takeaway. Yeah, and not taking it personally as well. I think we can add on to that because I would imagine that whatever that guy was shouting and swearing about was probably nothing to do with your engineer.
Probably just had a bollocking from his boss who'd had a bollocking from his boss, and the first bloke he bumped into on the shop floor was one of my guys.
Yeah.
Give him a shoeing.
Yeah. Which is, unacceptable. Oh, and finally, I just wanted to say, and this is kind of related to that as well, because if you've got somebody up in your face, trust your instincts, because if somebody is really giving you a lot of shit and you don't feel safe, then don't hang about. Leave. Get yourself out of there and get help, because, difficult people are usually just difficult, but you never really know. You never know what someone's going through. You never know what's in their head, and I wouldn't ever want someone to listen to this and think, oh, you can just talk people down. It's like, sometimes you can't.
No, just go.
And it's not your responsibility to do so.
And in a slightly less immediate way, if you've got a client who is always a pain in the arse and is always difficult and you don't enjoy it, and stop.
Yeah, stop.
Just stop, sack them.
You don't have to work with anybody that you don't want to.
Yeah.
You really don't. And if you think that you can't do without the money, that's not true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not true. There's 127 podcasts in this series, all of which, are stuffed with tips to help you grow your business and find new, better clients and, make more money from the clients that you have. So there is no reason or excuse to stay with a client that you hate, that makes your life miserable and difficult.
Yeah. Or is cheap. Anybody who's arguing, anybody who's creeping the scope all the time, anybody who's really you're not working together.
Yeah. You don't need any one. You do not need any one customer. Nobody needs any one customer ever. And so there's 3 key takeaways there.
Many key takeaways.
Yeah. No, I think we're going to make that the takeaway. Is you don't need any one single customer. You're not beholden to them.
Yeah.
You can choose your customers. There is always a better one out there. And there is always more money to be made elsewhere, but you can't get that time back. Do you want to spend your life being stressed and unhappy, or do you want to spend your time working with lovely people who you get on really well with? Because it is your choice.
Yep, it's your business. You design it.
Yeah. You are not a tree. If you don't like where you are, move.
Fair enough.
I really like that phrase. I don't know where I read it. I think I read it on an internet meme or something, but I really like it. So, as always, any questions? I might stop asking soon. I get email questions. I got an email question just now, actually. So we could answer it. We could answer it in the podcast, yeah. So this is from Dennis, who is in Canada, I believe.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Dennis. He says, I think you referenced the dung beetle more than once. And I don't know in what capacity. And I'm curious to know how you keep spirits up when progress seems or feels non-existent. Oh, he might be talking about my tiny beetle steps.
Ah.
Okay. So not a specific dung beetle, but, beetle.
Could well be.
Yeah. One tires of striking out too frequently, so what keeps you going when nothing seems to click?
Striking out being a baseball reference to not hitting the ball.
I guess so. But he's Canadian, so...
Do they do baseball in Canada?
I don't know.
Maybe it's rounders. I don't know.
Maybe. So yeah, how do I don't know, how do I carry on when it seems non-existent? It's a good question, actually, because everybody has times when they just feel totally fed up and like you're not getting anywhere. And I think that's why it's really important to measure your progress and track what you've done, because I'll sometimes feel like I've done nothing at all. And then I'll look back. It's like sometimes with the house, I feel like we've done nothing. And then I'll look back and I'm like, well, look, this year we've replaced the whole of the gable end wall. We've learned how to plaster. We've learned how to build a fence. We've learned how to build a sheep shelter out of stuff we've got lying around, MacGyver style. I've got a greenhouse full of stuff, and we're about to have a new staircase built. That's actually quite a lot. But we could very easily sit here and think, oh, we've made no progress on the house.
Yes, it depends on the scale on which you're looking. If you're looking on a day-to-day scale, progress is almost non-existent. If you're looking on a 6-month scale, progress is quite big.
Yeah, but if, as in Dennis's case, I suspect he's struggling business-wise, then I would say look at what you've been doing, and if it's not working, what can you do instead? And this podcast and my book are stuffed full of a bazillion ideas that you can try to grow your business. I find that in this case, I'm not saying this is Dennis's problem because I don't know the specifics, but I find that in most cases, people who come to me with that kind of thing, it's like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. They haven't actually tried anything other than the old tired, same old thing. It's like, oh, I'm blogging and it's not working. Oh, I'm doing this and it's not working. It's like, well, try something different. Yeah. Try something else.
I was going to say, that's one of the things that you do is you try 100 different things and some of them stick and a lot of them get ditched.
Yeah. It's like, pick up the phone. That's the other thing. If you want to work with people, pick up the phone and call them. If you can't physically visit them in person, pick up the phone. It's far more powerful than sitting behind a keyboard and sending an email or writing a blog post. Yeah. I can't even... And I hate making phone calls, but I will do it. I will do it, and it's never as bad as I think it's going to be. So if you really are struggling, if you're in dire straits and you're like, I haven't got any clients or customers and I don't know what to do, make a list of people that you want to work with and phone them. Even better, go and visit them. Because if you're not making any money, if you haven't got any customers, you have time to get off your ass and go and visit them. So that is my advice, is action, always action. Because if you're feeling like you're not getting anywhere and you're stuck, make a plan and then do it. So I hope that helps. Dennis. Yeah. Right, we're at the end of the podcast.
We definitely are.
Yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes. We would love you for it. If you think somebody else might enjoy it, send them to vickyfraser.com/podcast and they can sign up. And as we've been talking about Bookaholics this week, you can join Bookaholics Anonymous at vickyfraser.com/book club. It's totally free and it's really good fun. And we'll be back same time next week. Thanks very much, Joe.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.
Like what you've just heard? Tell your colleagues, tell your friends, send them to www.businessforsuperheroes.com/podcast.